So, sorry for the slight delay. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me in my Menopause Masterclass, in which I'm going to be covering 5 key steps, maybe more, in what you need to do to manage your menopause naturally through nutrition and lifestyle changes. So I'm a nutritional therapist, so I mainly work one-to-one with clients, and I specialize in menopause because it's something I'm very passionate about. When I went through the menopause myself 6 years ago, I was hit with some quite devastating symptoms: brain fog, hot flushes, anxiety. And I was working in the corporate world at that time, and it ultimately led to me being fired from my job, one of the major factors being brain fog. So I also have a history of breast cancer, so I was unable to take any replacement hormones at all and turn to natural causes and natural solutions. So I've been interested in holistic health for a long time, but it just gave me the impetus to retrain in nutrition. And so I absolutely love what I do. So I mainly work one-to-one, but I also run courses at GP surgeries. I've done some work in the NHS as a health and wellbeing coach. And I'm an ambassador for the charity Public Health Collaboration that also collaborates with the NHS and local GP surgery. So I've got, as I said, I've got a few slides, a few diagrams, a few charts that I want to go through. Please feel free to ask me questions, or we can wait until the end. It's entirely up to you. So let's get cracking. So I get very frustrated about the media coverage on menopause because it is very much focused on estrogen, progesterone, and more recently there's some talk about testosterone, but they're very much talked about in isolation, as if these are the only things that matter. And menopause is very much positioned as an estrogen deficiency, which I disagree with. It is a natural life stage that all women go through, and in many parts of the world, women don't experience any symptoms at all. I met a Japanese lady recently at a workshop, and when she started getting hot flushes, she didn't know what was happening, and she spoke to her mum in Japan. And it's, up until recently in Japan, they didn't even have a word for hot flushes. So there is something to be said about your attitude towards menopause. To some extent dictates how you will experience it. And research has showed that if you have a negative attitude, you're likely to have 30% more symptoms. So I just wanted to put this chart in just to show that our hormones, throughout our lives, our hormones are designed to cycle. So estrogen, it says estradiol on here because it's an American slide. It rises and falls a little bit each month, and progesterone to a greater extent. But when we get into perimenopause, which can start as early as your late 30s, your progesterone can crash and your estrogen can spike. And so you have a great imbalance in the hormones, which is responsible for a lot of the symptoms. And then when you've gone through menopause, the definition, which you may know, is just one day, 12 months after your last period, and then you're post-menopause, and your hormones are roughly at 40% of the level they were before. So I'm not going to dwell on this. And the next chart, I don't want you to be frightened, but I just want to show you this chart because this is not something that I would ever show to a client. This is something that people interested in nutrition and biochemistry look at. But this is a chart that shows how our hormones are created. So they are very complex. There are more than 50 hormones in our body, and all we seem to hear about is estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. There are actually 3 different types of estrogen, depending on what life stage you're at, and they all work together like an orchestra. And when one's out of whack, a lot of the other ones are as well. And you'll see, if you can actually see this, I know it's a little bit blurred, there's cortisol, so stress hormones on here. So we're going to be talking about that. But the reason why I wanted to show you this, apart from to highlight that hormones are very complex, is that our bodies are not just our ovaries. Our bodies are subject to billions of chemical processes every single second. And so our hormones are made through different chemical steps. And I'm not going to get bogged down, hopefully, in biochemistry, but some of the things that I want to explain to you about food do require just a teeny weeny bit of an understanding of some of the processes that are involved, which can cause symptoms. So that is all about hormones. You just need to know they're complex, and we're now going to move on to what nutritional steps you can take to feel good and to address your symptoms. So the first one, and this is the most important, and I talk about this in every single talk I give, not just about hormones either. I did one last night on dementia, and this is a key factor there as well. And blood sugar balance. You may not have even thought about your blood sugar, or blood glucose, as the proper term is, unless you or somebody you know has been diagnosed with diabetes. So when we eat, we all know sugar is not good for us, right? So when we eat sugar, it's a very simple molecule. It breaks down into our blood very, very quickly, and we get spikes of our blood sugar. And because sugar is dangerous for our blood vessels, our body produces a hormone, and this hormone is one of the key hormones that affect you in menopause, is insulin. And insulin's job is to push the sugar out of your blood and into all of your cells in your body where it's used for energy.
Need to approve it.
Would everybody mind putting themselves on mute, please, for the time being, unless you want to ask a question? So what happens is you eat something sugary, your blood sugar spikes, and to be healthy, our blood sugar and our insulin levels need to be kept within a very narrow range, the green range on this chart. So when you eat sugary foods, your blood sugar spikes out of range. Your body thinks it's going to have to process a lot of sugar, and it needs to get this sugar out of your blood ASAP. So a lot of insulin is produced, and then as that sugar enters your cells, insulin levels fall. But because your body's produced so much, the levels fall below what is healthy. And so you get this blood sugar roller coaster. And this is what causes, so this is what causes, when you get the crash, this is when you start feeling hungry, moody, hangry. It can contribute to mood swings, energy crashes, depression, anxiety. So you're on this blood sugar roller coaster, and it's not a good place to be for all of these reasons. Plus, so we've covered sugary food, but a lot of people don't realize that when you eat carbs, especially white carbs, very refined carbohydrates, they are also broken down in the blood as sugar. So you also get a spike, maybe not as much. And the reason why this is important is, for many reasons that I'm going to be talking about. So you only need a tiny, tiny bit of sugar in your blood at any one time, about 1 teaspoon, which is 4 grams. And if you're not using the rest of that sugar that's entered your body, then it is transported off to the liver, and it's converted into fat, and it's stored as fat. So it is impossible to lose weight, if weight is your concern, when you have insulin in your blood. And as you as we get to menopause, we become more resistant to insulin, which means that our body is not as efficient in handling this process as it used to be. So we develop something called insulin resistance. We also, our metabolism slows down as we age, which also means that when it comes to weight, we're predisposed to putting on weight. And when it comes to hormones, insulin plays havoc with your hormones. So this is where some of the chemical processes come in, and I'm only going to cover them at a really high level. So when you have insulin in your blood, it can reduce one of the proteins that carries estrogen and testosterone around your body. It's called sex hormone binding globulin. You don't need to know about that, but it is very important, because if you've got very low amounts of this in your blood because of high insulin levels, because of the sugar and starchy carbs you're eating, you are likely to have higher levels of estrogen and testosterone flowing around, and that is not good. You get conditions that are sometimes called estrogen dominance, things like polycystic ovaries. I've talked about insulin resistance. It causes weight gain, hairy face, just to name but a few. So insulin is not good for this. It also, high insulin levels stimulate the production of the male hormones, the androgens. There's many of them, but we mainly talk about testosterone. But because there's lots of chemical processes, there's some other names. And that also causes imbalances. And thirdly, there's an enzyme that converts testosterone into estrogen. So estrogen is created from testosterone. That enzyme, aromatase, is increased when insulin is too high. So that's another reason why you might have too high levels of circulating estrogen. And again, that's related to things like fibroids, endometriosis, and it underpins almost all chronic diseases, diabetes, heart disease, osteoporosis. And so all of these are causing imbalances in your hormones. And just like insulin needs to be in a very narrow range, so does estrogen. And you might think, oh, this doesn't sound right. In menopause, everybody's talking about low estrogen. So isn't it good that I've got higher levels? And the answer is no, because estrogen is actually quite inflammatory and causes a lot of symptoms. So typical signs of hormonal imbalance. I mean, we all know about menopause symptoms, hot flushes, weight gain, anxiety, brain fog. I mean, there's lots and lots of them, but other things. So if, throughout your life, you've had painful periods, heavy periods, you've had PMS or PMT or whatever it's called, that's a sign of hormonal imbalance. And we've been brought up to just accept it or not question it. But that's a hormonal imbalance. Headaches, migraines, fatigue, cravings, low libido, insomnia, acne, migraines. I mean, all of these are symptoms of hormonal imbalance. So that's why sugar and starchy carbs are not your friend, especially at this age. And I think many people, I'm just going to show you this sugar graphic, which I use a lot, produced by a British GP based in Southport, to highlight, a lot of people don't realise that starchy carbs, especially the white, refined, rice, potatoes, pasta, and anything refined, they don't realise that it's breaking down into sugar into the blood, the same way as eating a donut does. So this chart is really good at showing just how many teaspoons of sugar 150 grams of basmati rice gives you, and it's a lot, bearing in mind that you only need 1 teaspoon in your blood at any one time. The same goes for white potatoes, French fries, white spaghetti, Sweet corn is quite starchy. So again, your body, even though, some of these things are vegetables and you think they're healthy, your body still sees it as sugar. Frozen peas are not too bad. Bananas get a bad rap. Any exotic fruit get a bad rap because they are higher in sugars. And even though, these fruits like bananas, pineapple, mango, papaya, they've got some good vitamins and nutrients in them. Yes, they do. But as far as your body's concerned, it's still sugar. And it's still going to spike your insulin levels, and it could be contributing to some of your symptoms. Apples are not too bad. Bread, not great. Even a small slice of wholemeal bread is going to break down as sugar. But then things like broccoli, eggs, they're all low glycemic index, as are things like chicken, oily fish, almonds, mushrooms, cheese, meat. So really, the message is that you need to be thinking about replacing any of these, for example, white rice with whole grain rice, whole wheat pasta if you want to eat pasta, and as unrefined and unprocessed as you can get. If weight is a concern, then reducing down the carbs is really advised. But it's not all doom and gloom because, okay, so I've forgotten I put this in. So this shows what happens with the different carbs. So it's just a variation on the blood sugar roller coaster. So the red spike is the sugar. So your blood sugar and your insulin are spiking way out of range. White carbs are spiking again out of range, but not as high. And then whole grains, fruits, veggies, legumes should keep your blood sugar balanced, which is what we're aiming for. We're aiming for healthy blood sugar range and limited insulin being produced for all the reasons that I covered that affect your symptoms. And when you're eating, and if you're going to reduce your carbs or you're going to continue to eat carbs, even whole grain carbs, my advice is to eat your balanced plate. We're going to go on to the other factors in a moment, proteins next. But when you eat protein with carbs, it slows down that sugar spike or that spike in your blood sugar and your insulin. So when you're eating, it's best to eat the protein and the vegetables before any carbs that you have on your plate. And the same goes for fat as well, but we're going to cover those in more detail. So blood sugar balance is, in my opinion, the most important thing to manage. And I've seen great results with clients that have got their blood sugar under control, and it's vital for losing weight, but also for managing hot flushes, cravings. It can help you, it can disturb your sleep if your blood sugar is imbalanced. A lot of people wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and are wide awake and don't know why. And obviously that could be stress related, but it could be if your blood sugar is imbalanced, that it's fallen too low, it's out of range, and so your body kicks in and produces some cortisol, some stress hormone, to push some sugar into your blood. And once you've got stress hormones rushing around your body, you can't go back to sleep. I mean, I know that is a common menopause symptom, and blood sugar balance is one of the reasons why that might be happening if that's happening to you. Other things that affect your blood sugar are stress. So as I just mentioned, when you're stressed, you've got a lot of cortisol and noradrenaline pumping around. And when you're stressed, your body is pumping sugar into your blood. So we'll talk a little bit about stress later, but we all know stress is not good, but it's particularly not good at this time of life. Alcohol also is, depending on what you're drinking, largely sugar, especially if you're drinking beer and some wines. Caffeine can affect your blood sugar, and also lack of sleep. But we'll come on to some of the other lifestyle factors in a bit. So that's the first step. Manage your blood sugar, reduce your starchy carbs, and avoid eating sugar as much as you can. Avoid eating refined and processed food. And if you find you have cravings and sugar cravings, this is one of the reasons why. And once you've managed to get out of that by balancing your blood sugar, you will stop craving sugar. So step 2, eating high quality protein every day and at every meal. So most of us are not eating enough. And especially as we age, it becomes really more important because we're susceptible to muscle wastage. So protein is used for pretty much everything in the body. So I was talking about proteins and enzymes earlier. You need protein to create those, and they're vital for all of our hormones. They're important for the growth and repair of all our cells, skin, hair, nails, which sometimes can suffer or be affected at menopause. They're made of protein, and muscles are made of protein, and they're essential for our mental health. So our body uses protein, which is broken down into amino acid, to create neurotransmitters. So I don't know whether you know what a neurotransmitter is or are, but serotonin, I think a lot of people have heard of serotonin in relation to depression, but it's not the only mood neurotransmitter. Adrenaline, noradrenaline, dopamine, GABA, they all have or contribute to the feel-good factor, help you improve your motivation, your concentration, your memory, help you manage stress. And low levels of these and protein can leave you feeling lethargic, distracted, demotivated. And so you need to be eating protein with every meal. And as I mentioned previously in relation to blood sugar balance, the good thing is that when you eat protein, it takes longer to digest. And if you eat protein with some starchy carbs, it smooths out that blood sugar curve. So you need to be eating approximately 20 grams of protein at each meal and at breakfast, and it keeps you feeling full longer. So you don't want to eat sugary snacks. So we're talking about good quality protein. So we're thinking about grass-fed, organic if you can, or wild meat, fish, eggs, dairy, pulses, hummus, quinoa, nuts and seeds. And as I mentioned, protein is broken down into amino acids. There are 9 essential ones. Essential means your body can't make them, so you have to take it in. And animal products are complete proteins. It means they have all 9 essential amino acids in them, whereas there are not many vegetable proteins. I don't know whether there are any vegetarians, but there are not many complete vegetarian proteins or vegan proteins. There are a few.
Hello.
Yes.
Louise. So I'm a vegetarian and I'm fat. So in terms of proteins, what can I actually do? All I've got to give us?
Yes, so I'm going to show you some charts in a moment, but the complete proteins that are vegetable, plant-based proteins that contain all the amino acids are soy, so things like tofu.
Yeah.
Quinoa is a complete protein. Amaranth and buckwheat. So they are complete, as in they have all 9 amino acids in them. The other proteins, so other vegetables have pulses, legumes, rice. They have some protein in them, but they don't have all 9 amino acids in. So that's why, in some cultures, like in the Caribbean, they eat rice with beans, because eating rice together with beans gives you a full complement of the amino acids. So if you're a vegetarian, do you eat Do you eat cheese and eggs or not?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, so you're getting some you know, animal products. So you are getting some complete proteins. So you need to, sorry.
I was just saying thanks for this.
Oh, okay, sorry. You're just a bit muffled. And most people that I see are not eating protein at breakfast. And it's really important to have protein at breakfast. It's good for your circadian rhythm, your body clock. So it will help you sleep better later. It will help you stop snacking. It will keep you feeling fuller longer. And especially if you're looking to reduce your carbs, it will help you feel satiated. And because of these essential amino acids, if you don't have protein first thing in the morning or at breakfast, your body starts, bodies are very, as I've shown, complex and clever. They start panicking that they might not be getting enough of the amino acids throughout the day. So they can stimulate you to feel hungry, because they're encouraging you to eat because they want to make sure you're going to get them. So that's another reason to eat protein. So we need about, so I talked about on average 20 grams of protein at each meal. We need about 1.2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. But if you don't want to work that out, especially as we age, that is, and more if you do a lot of exercise. But so if you just think about 20 grams of protein at each meal, and what does that look like? So you have to think about a piece of meat is not 100% protein. So this is the percentage protein per 100 grams. So clams and other mollusks are high in protein, 48 grams, 48%. Parmesan cheese, beef, 36%. So you can see that the animal proteins are much higher percentage-wise than, for example, eggs at 12.5 grams. So depending on the size of the eggs, to get your 20 grams, you might need 3 eggs if they're very small, or 2 eggs to get your 20. And tofu, second from the bottom, 17 grams. That is lower than, for example, beef. And coming on to some of the other vegetarian sources, you can see that these are just in order of percentage. So the lowest protein is in porridge oats at 3 grams. So you can see that you need to eat a huge, or not huge, but a larger quantity of all of these vegetarian type proteins to get enough.
Yeah.
And eating enough protein is really important for lots of things that I've mentioned, but especially, if you're suffering from brain fog, that it's important. I mean, protein is just really
I've got really a bad brain fog, but I can't say words anymore. And I'm an advocate, so I have to speak every day.
Okay.
And I literally, some days I'm all right, and then the other days I literally cannot speak a word. I can't do it.
Okay. And I know the feeling that happens to me. Protein is one of the factors. We're going to be talking about fats in a minute. I haven't quite finished on protein, but fat is important too. But yeah, so brain fog, eating enough protein is essential. And so what does 20 grams of protein look like? So red meat, it's not actually, well, depending on the density of the protein, it's not actually that huge. So a piece of red meat, it's only 77 grams, which isn't a large amount. Chicken breast, 87 grams. So it just gives you an idea of what this looks like. But really, so I encourage you to be eating protein for every meal. Start with protein. Think, what's my protein? Start from there and then add. And we're going to be talking about the other factors. Okay, so those are the first 2 steps: blood sugar balance, reducing the carbs, and making sure you're eating enough protein. The third one is not to fear fat. So I see so many women that are scared of fat, and they think that fat will make you fat. And I hope I've explained clearly enough that it's not the fat, it's the sugar, it's the starch, that is causing your body to produce insulin, insulin being the fat storage hormone. So fat is really not to be feared. And if you eat low fat, as many people do, and I know back in the 80s, I was following Rosemary Conley's hip and thigh diet, the low fat diet, it can really affect your hormonal balance because all our hormones are made from fat. From a chemical structure perspective, our hormones are made from cholesterol. So if you're not eating enough fat, you might not have the raw materials your body needs to create the hormones in the first place. And signs that you're not eating enough fat, there are many brain symptoms. So this is really important for brain fog. I'm going to go into more details about the type of fat, because not all fat is equal. But signs that you're not eating enough fat are dry skin, fatigue, aching joints, memory loss, brain fog, inflammation, breast pain, heavy periods. It really is a lubricant, it's nature's lubricant. And it's such a shame that that fat has been demonized, I guess. And so also, if you buy low fat products, so if you buy low fat yogurt, for example, the fat makes food taste good. So if the fat's been taken out, it's likely to have something else added, most likely sugar. And there's so many different names for sugar that if you look on packaging, you might not even recognize the names that are on there. So please don't buy anything low fat, go full fat. Also, if you're eating a low fat diet, you might be eating very healthy. So you might be eating good protein, lots of fruit and veg that we're going to come on to, that have lots of good nutrients in them. But if your body is fat starved, so you won't be able to absorb the vitamins that are fat soluble in those healthy products, healthy foods. So the fat soluble vitamins are vitamin A, vitamin D, E, and K. So there's many reasons why, oops, I'm going to show you that. Yeah, why we need to eat fat. But in particular, what we need to be eating are omega-3 fatty acids. So they are essential. It's an essential fatty acid, like the essential amino acids. It means your body can't make them. And they are found in oily fish. So we're talking about salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring, trout, oily fish. Our brains are 60% fat, and your brain really needs omega-3 in there to function properly. So for brain fog, memory, hot flushes, mood swings, skin health, overall mental health, avoiding and preventing dementia, helping to reduce aches and pains, increasing energy levels, increasing libido. It helps keep all the membranes of your cells healthy. And it's anti-inflammatory, and it can counteract some of the horrible effects of insulin on some of the proteins and the enzymes that we talked about earlier. So really you should be aiming to eat 3 portions of oily fish a week. And I know I speak to a lot of people and they don't like oily fish, or that they can just about tolerate salmon. So this is where I would say that an omega-3 supplement is important. If you're not going to eat oily fish, I would say try it, because I think they're delicious, and it doesn't matter whether they're fresh or in tins. You can buy tin sardines, tinned anchovies, then give it a go. But you will notice a difference.
Can I, Min?
Yeah. Sorry, was that a question? No? Okay. You might have heard of omega-6. which is another essential fatty acids, but the Western diets are very high in omega-6, which are from all the other food, from vegetable oils, nuts, and everything else we eat. And what's really important is the balance between omega-6 and omega-3, and most people have far too many. The ratio is in some people 70-1, and it really needs to be 3-1. So omega-3, that's what you need to eat. Wild fish. Did I yeah, I did put this in. So I just wanted to show this because when I talk about fat, people start saying, but what about saturated fat? Doesn't that cause heart disease, and isn't that dangerous? But so the reason why I wanted to show this was because all real foods, we're talking about natural, real, unprocessed foods that your grandmother or great-grandmother would recognize. They all contain a combination of fats. So it's very rare that any one food is just saturated fat. So, for example, on this diagram, we've got red meat, we've got a piece of sirloin. And out of 100 grams, 7% is fat. So total of so 7% is fat. And of that fat, only 2.1% is saturated. So it's just highlighting the point that even olive oil, which we all know is fat, it's oil, 100% fat, only 14% is saturated. Even lard is only 39% saturated. So just to highlight that saturated fat is not, when we're talking about eating real food, whole foods, as unprocessed as possible, you don't need to worry about saturated fat. What you do need to worry about is processed fats, trans fats that can be in a lot of baked goods and anything produced in a factory, essentially, and also vegetable oils like sunflower oil, rapeseed oil. Unless they're cold pressed, they are produced through a very complex, refined process. And if you saw the diagram, you probably think you were looking at a diagram of how petrol was being produced. And they are not healthy. They are toxic for the body. Anything that's toxic gets stored away safely to keep you safe in your fat cells. Okay, so don't fear fat. So when you're thinking about your plate, so we talked about, think about protein first. Think about fats. What healthy fats are you going to get? And then think about, oops, I forgot about that one. So yeah, so what's saturated fat? What steak is really full of? Steak, piece of steak, is 70% water, 20% protein, and 7% fat. We already covered that on the last slide. But I think that's an interesting, I think it's important to know that because of all the talk you hear about saturated fat. No, that's really dangerous and not quite as simple as that. So moving on to the next step, feed your gut bugs. So your gut microbiome, I don't know whether you know anything about it, but we have a very large community of microbes in and on our bodies. There's bacteria, there's viruses, there's fungi, all over our body, and they live in, generally speaking, mostly in harmony with us. And it's thought that there are potentially up to 10 times more bacterial cells on us and within us than there are human cells, and they have their own DNA. And this is a massive area of research and how it affects our health. 60% of our hormones are produced in our gut. When I talk about gut, I'm really talking about our large intestine, our large bowel. So when you hear somebody talking about your gut microbes or your microbiome, generally they're speaking about your large intestine and the community of bacteria that live in there. And the best way to think about it is, I mean, every one of us, our microbiome is going to be unique. Think of it as your own personal inner garden. So what you feed it with is essentially what you're eating. So if you're eating a lot of sugar and a lot of starchy carbs, they can feed the not so good bacteria. So in the television ads, you see lots of adverts for friendly bacteria and unfriendly bacteria. So, that's one way of describing them. And so what you eat affects them. So sugar can create an imbalance, feeding the not so good ones, the not so beneficial ones, and crowding out the good ones. But it's not just about balance and not having too many of the not so good ones. It's all about diversity. There are so many different species of bacteria in your gut. And if you want to know what you've got in your gut, you can do a stool test to find out. It's really fascinating. But you need diversity, and they are producing hormones. 70% of your immune system, they are helping your digestion. If you've got any tummy problems at all, this is one area to look. They are producing vitamins and so many other substances that are essential for health. So the best way to ensure that you've got a healthy gut, apart from not overdoing the sugar and the starch, is to eat a diverse range of vegetables and low sugar fruit. We talk about feeding them the rainbow. So all of the different colours of vegetables and fruit have all different plant chemicals, compounds, nutrients in them that not only have good vitamins and other nutrients and antioxidants, which help prevent our body from being damaged by all the processes that are happening, but they feed our gut bugs. So the fibre, it's the fibre in vegetables that can't be digested by our own digestive system. So before it gets to the large intestine, so it passes down into your large intestine, and your gut bugs feed on this fibre. This is what helps them thrive. So when we're thinking about a plate of food, think protein, think fat, think veg, and low sugar fruits. And quite often I set people a challenge of trying to get, so not only eating the rainbow, so across all the colours, but trying to eat 30 different types of plant foods a week. And some people think, oh my goodness, I can't do that. But it's actually not that difficult when you think, if you start thinking about adding veg to every meal. So if you're having an omelette for breakfast, add a chili if you like chilies, add some spinach, add some chopped herbs, add some spring onions. I mean, always be thinking about, oops, gone too far. Always be thinking about the veg. If your gut microbes are out of balance and you've been eating too much sugar, the not so great bugs can create another enzyme that stops estrogen leaving the body. So everything that is produced in your body and everything that you take in has to be cleared and eliminated through your liver and through, urine and stool. And so, or hormones. So one thing that affects hormonal balance is your liver not being able to process and get rid of estrogen properly. And your gut plays a role here. So if you've been eating the sugary starchy carbs and you've got too much of an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase, that can stop estrogen leaving your body and it can re-enter circulation, and it can be quite toxic and quite damaging. Our gut is connected to our brain. There's two-way communication between our brain and gut via something called the vagus nerve. So it's been shown the relationship between what's happening in your brain and your gut and your mental health. So eating, I would say, I mean, you hear the government talk about your 5 a day. That isn't actually based on any scientific evidence, but it was just a number they came up with. But most people in this country are not eating 5 a day at all. And it really isn't enough. So I'm encouraging people to eat 7 to 10 portions of veg and lower sugar fruit a day. Let me just quickly check my notes because there's some things that I wanted to cover. So when it comes to a healthy gut, so also going to the toilet, which I wasn't going to talk about, eliminating everything. If you're not going every day, then you're going to be having some fermentation here. Some things are backing up. It's not healthy. Quite remarkably, I think doctors don't think they categorize constipation as going every 2 or 3 days, or that's not too bad, but really should be going every day. That affects your gut as well. Wasn't even going to talk about poo, but sorry, I'm going to move on. So the best vegetables for hormonal balance are the green leafy veg, the cruciferous vegetable family: broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, rocket, watercress. They're all hormonal superfoods. Not only do they have a lot of great, vitamins and minerals in them, but they also support your liver in clearing the hormones from your body, which is really, really important. So recommend that you include those in your diet. If you've got a lot of menopause symptoms, try and have a portion every day. And then there's different types of food that can positively affect your gut microbes. So you've probably heard of probiotics because they're very popular as a supplement. And there are so many different strains now, it can be difficult to know what to take because different strains in research have now been associated with different conditions. But the best way, so you don't need to buy a probiotic supplement unless you're going to take antibiotics. Antibiotics can wipe out a whole community of your good gut microbes. But you can eat fermented foods that have live cultures in them to help repopulate and stimulate and create a healthy gut flora. So fermented foods are things like kefir. You can buy it as a yogurt now. Sauerkraut, kimchi, tempeh, miso, kombucha, which is a fermented tea drink. As long as they're produced in a way that's not heat treated, that it's going to kill. Sorry, keep hitting the wrong key. Not going to kill the live cultures. These are a good way of ensuring you've got a healthy gut. Plus, some fiber in vegetables. Some other vegetables have what we call soluble fiber, also called a prebiotic, which just essentially means it's a fertilizer, like putting fertilizer on your gut bugs, on your inner garden. And so you're feeding them and helping them grow. They're feeding the healthy ones, that is, the beneficial bacteria. So examples of soluble fiber are garlic, onions, leeks, lentils, sweet potatoes, asparagus, chicory, oats, brown rice, flax seeds, Jerusalem artichokes. So the message is eat a lot of veg, and for every meal be thinking, like I've already said, what veg am I going to have? Am I eating across the rainbow? What different colours can I try today or this week or whenever you're going shopping? When it comes to alcohol is like pouring weed killer on your gut bugs and encourages the growth of the not so good, the potentially pathogenic bacteria. And it can also affect some of the enzymes that I talked about that affect hormonal balance. I mentioned antibiotics can wipe out large communities of our gut bugs, and it can take weeks, months, years sometimes, depending on how many courses of antibiotics you've had, to restore your gut. So if you are going to take antibiotics, this is where I would recommend taking a probiotic supplement. If you're not used to eating a lot of veg, because I'm talking about ideally eating 7 to 10 portions a day, then build up slowly, and especially if when it comes to fermented food, because these are having an impact on your gut bugs. If you overdo it, you can get a bit of excess wind, shall we say, and potentially a little bit of bloating, but So take it easy. If you're going to go with start with fermented foods, start slowly and build up. But any sort of excess wind or gas, it should calm down after a couple of weeks. So just take it slow. What else? Sleep helps your gut. So does fasting. And I wasn't really going to talk much about fasting. So I just want to move on to next step 5, and that is eating phytoestrogens. So many of the vegetables I've been talking about and the plant foods have phytoestrogens. Phyto just means plant. And so there are some foods and vegetables, plants that weakly mimic human estrogen, but very, very weakly, like, so 100%, 100 times weaker than human estrogen, but they can be really helpful if you've got symptoms, because when you're in menopause or post-menopause like me, when your estrogen levels are generally lower, they can help raise your estrogen levels. And when you're in perimenopause and maybe you've got some massive imbalances between estrogen and progesterone, and your levels of estrogen are maybe too high, they can also lower them. And they also can disrupt some of the enzymes that we've talked about that are not helpful for hormonal balance. So what are we talking about? So there are some in most plant foods, but these are some sources of phytoestrogens per density. So one of the most dense and the best is flaxseed. So you can buy milled flax seeds. You can buy them everywhere now. You can buy them in the supermarket. You don't need to go to a health food shop. And you can sprinkle them on fruit and yogurt and salads and soups and whatever you want. Soybeans also are high in phytoestrogens. And so things like edamame, tofu. But when we're talking about soy, I know I've spoken to lots of women who swear by their soy milk. So soy milk is on here. It's best to go with the most unprocessed, organic, natural soy that you can get. But that pretty much applies to all the foods I'm talking about. We're talking about real foods, whole foods, not refined, not processed. So I can send you some of this information so you've got this to hand, so you can see that they're in a huge range, variety of plant-based foods to a larger or lesser extent. One caveat with phytoestrogens is that the way they work in the body is that they get into your gut. So we've just been talking about the gut microbiome, and they are then acted upon by your gut microbes to produce the substances that are beneficial. So the weakly mimicking versions of estrogen. So you need a healthy microbiome for this to be effective, but it doesn't mean to say you shouldn't try them, because the only way you improve the health of your microbiome, as we've discussed, is to eat a wide variety of vegetables and fruit, low sugar fruit. So those are the 6 key steps from a nutritional perspective that I work with all my clients on, but personalizing it. But then when it comes to lifestyle factors, I know we're running out of time, but there's a lot of things that make a difference as well. So I touched on sleep briefly. So the purpose of sleep is to repair, reorganize, maintain your brain health, consolidate your memories. It's a bit like putting your body on a rinse cycle. So sleep is super important, and especially for menopause symptoms, brain fog, not getting enough sleep can make you harvest more calories from food. It can affect your blood sugar balance. It's linked to all sorts of things. So aiming for ideally 8 hours of sleep a night is what we're looking for, and it can just that one thing alone can make a huge difference to how you feel. Stress is also a very big driver of menopause symptoms, and I'm not going to talk about that in a lot of detail because I know that a lot of us are stressed, have busy lives, busy jobs, and there's lots of things you can do about it. Mindfulness, meditation, yoga, just going for a walk, reading a book. But it's really important that you manage your stress levels because when you do, you will see a reduction in symptoms. Exercise, very important. It's good for your mental health. It gets oxygen to the brain. And at this time of life, menopause, perimenopause, it's better to be focusing less on the lots of cardio. I see so many women that are concerned about their weight. They've got menopause symptoms and they're running 2 or 3 times a week, and they think they need to increase that to feel better. And maybe they do feel better, but it's not necessarily going to help your symptoms. What we need to be doing is doing more strength training. So cardio is important, but don't overdo it. You need to be doing strength training to build our muscles, more metabolically active. And also as we get older, and we're subject to muscle wastage, we need those muscles. We need to get the muscle pulling on the bone to give the message to our bones that they need to stay strong and healthy, and avoiding things like osteoporosis, osteopenia. Mentioned alcohol. We talked about that in regard to blood sugar balance, gut microbes, and it is a big contributor to a lot of symptoms, particularly hot flushes, I've found. So I can't tolerate alcohol hardly at all. So I advise women that I work with to, if you've got into the habit of drinking wine every night to help you relax, firstly, it doesn't really help you. Well, it does help you relax, of course it does. It doesn't really help you get a good night's sleep. It's a bit like sleeping pills, they're a sedative. But try having some alcohol-free days. Maybe just try going for a couple of weeks without any and see how you feel. I've certainly seen huge reductions in things like hot flushes, better sleep, better mental clarity. And then the final area, that is another huge area, but it does get quite chemical, get into more biochemistry, is the area of toxins. So I've already talked about how estrogen and anything else that's going into your body needs to be processed by your liver and removed. But also that we are exposed to a lot of toxins in plastics, in our household cleaning products, pollution, in our moisturizers, our makeup, our shower gels, our hair, our shampoos. And a lot of these contain chemicals that cause xenoestrogens. So they confuse, some of them are structurally similar to estrogen, and they enter the body and they can confuse your body. And so they could be contributing to an imbalance as well. So look out for products that don't have sodium lauryl sulfate in them, parabens. They are out there. I think that's all I'm going to say about that, because it is a huge subject and it can get a bit technical talking about it. But these are all areas to cover, and it's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and I haven't even talked about water, hydration, drinking enough water, which can help everything. Yeah. So does anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop my sharing.
How much water do you think we should have, Helen, a day?
Water?
Yeah.
Around 2 litres.
2 litres, thank you.
Yes, I mean, if you're doing a lot of exercise, then more.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not I would say. I thought it's really good. I've really enjoyed it.
Okay, I mean, I've just skimmed the surface, really. Ali's asking what is saturated fat, what is unsaturated fat. So, I mean, it all comes down to the chemical bonds in the fat. So one has one chemical double bond and the unsaturated doesn't. So it's all about chemical structure and what that does to the body. So I wouldn't worry about it other than to really focus on the omega-3, which are polyunsaturated fats. The omega-3s, no, we're not getting enough omega-3s. And undoubtedly that's causing an increase in a lot of chronic disease. So any thoughts on powdered collagen supplements? Yes, I take supplement collagen every day. This is what I take. Don't know if you can see it. Collagen peptides. So I started taking collagen powder about a year ago, and the main reason that I take it is because I have achy thumb joints, or I did have before I started taking it. And so I think it can be very beneficial because it's, it can support your skin, all your cell membranes, everything in the body, pretty much. And there's different kinds of collagen that do different things. So this one has all 6 types in it. So I really recommend that. Any other questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself if you want to. You don't need to put a question in the comment. I know a few people have jumped off.
Can I have a picture of your things again? What you're taking? I'm taking pictures.
This is it's Nature's Plus collagen peptides, and it has all 6 types of collagen in. So the different types, it's got types 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. They all do different things. You can Google them and find out what they all do, but some of them are for skin, some of them are for muscle, some of them are for joints. They all do different things. So I definitely think with anything supplement wise and collagen, try it and see. If you don't notice a difference, stop.
Yeah.
Or work with me on a one-to-one, and I can't give personalized supplement advice to a group. It doesn't really work like that. But
how does it work working with you? So could I do it virtually, or do I come to your house, or?
Yeah, so I work virtually. So I work on Zoom. I mean, I generally, when it comes to hormones and menopause, I generally work over 12 to 16 weeks on a program.
Right.
And involves taking a full detailed health history and really personalizing all the things that I've talked about today. Yeah. I cover with everybody, but it's more personal, looking at your symptoms, what's driving your symptoms, what foods do you want to eat, what is your lifestyle like, and creating a personalized plan for you. And then I can advise specific supplements.
Helen, can I just ask, did you say so you could take probiotics, but another option was did you say things like kefir and sour
fermented food?
Fermented food. So that you wouldn't do that as well as a probiotic, or could you do both? Or
well, you could do, but I mean, I don't think you would necessarily need to. I would try the fermented food if you find something you like. I mean, I really like kefir yogurt.
Yeah.
So I eat that. I do have sauerkraut and kimchi from time to time if I'm in the mood. I know that I probably should eat more, but it's an acquired taste.
Oh, isn't it? So you just like have a spoon of it or something?
Yeah, of course. But if you're starting with fermented, start small, so you don't get too much excess wind. Or if you're not bothered about wind, then eat as much as you like. But just be warm. That's all.
Thank you so much. That was really, really brilliant.
You're very welcome. I'm going to stop the recording.